I'm here with Tim Fielder. You know, gosh, you've been doing it all. I mean, you know, you're one of the OGs of Afrofuturism. You've been doing this for a while.
I have. I have been doing it for a long while. You know, and for the record, let me state, I am not alone in this process. You know, there are other folks out there, men and women, who've been doing this for many, many years. But my specific uh, 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 focus, which is in comics, is what I classify as unambiguous Afrofuturism, meaning that it's literally Black people in spaceships. That's what it is. I'm not playing with horror norms direct. I don't deal so much with the ethnogothic. It is pretty much straight science fiction, although Infinitum as a project is pretty big and expansive.
Well, I mean, and let's talk a little bit of that. I mean, I had an opportunity to read Infinitum. It's an amazing book.
Thank you.
You know, and I mean, you and I have been in touch for many years, and I remember seeing some of the old sketches. I remember seeing the little animated piece you did. Gosh, way back at the at BSAM in St. Louis, right?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so I kind of see this as you know, and correct me if I'm wrong, as this being a project that's a culmination of a lot of other works.
Yes, and you're very astute to pick that up. As a 54-year-old man, African-American male, one begins to you begin to question what your legacy is, because you obviously have more time behind you than you do in front of you. And I've been doing this for a long while, and I have more time behind me than I do in front. And when it comes to my work, I went for a long time having great difficulty finishing things. And one of the ways that I was able to resolve that is simply by not trying to do that work through other people. Just, I needed to do it myself. And so that's why I did Maddie's Rocket. So ironically, there was an article written in late 2016 by New York Times, and I was included in that. And they asked me, okay, well, you're going to be one of the Afrofuturists featured in the story, because at the time I had a big gallery show career retrospective called Black Metropolis. And I was asked to do a story. And so I submitted 3 different stories. And of course, one of the ones that I submitted was Infinitum, which I created back in, the genesis of that story was created back in the early 2000s. And of course, you know, Black Man is Immortal God wasn't going to go over that well for that crowd. So they passed on that one. But I've always loved the idea and the story of Infinitum. And after that story was shut down, and then the other one, there was no time to do it, and I can't just dial work in. You know, I could have just done something quick, but no, I don't want to. I'm a child of the Metal Hurlant artist. I believe in fully rendered work. That's what I do. It should be like that. And so I decided to proceed ahead. So I proceeded to do my work for me and not worry about the other things. The irony is that as I begin to do that, then all of a sudden here comes the mainstream calling. And I was hired by HarperCollins. I entered into a book deal with HarperCollins, Amistad. Tracy Schwab was my editor and was very gracious to give me an opportunity to do it.
So wow. I mean, you know, and I want to talk more about Infinitum, but I feel like we've kind of gotten ahead of ourselves a little bit.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little. I'd like to also hear about some of the projects that you did coming into Infinitum. Like, I'm thinking about Maddie's Rocket. You know, I'm thinking about the work that you were doing before that, right? That there is a trajectory here. Yeah, Maddie's Rocket.
Yeah, there is. And there is a trajectory. How should I say, man? I've been doing this for a very, 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 very long time. I started doing Afrofuturism before it was called that, before Mark created the term, coined the term. And we just called it black sci-fi at the time. And I remember at the age of 17, 18 in Clarksdale, Mississippi, reading Nova, and it becoming apparent to me when I'm reading it, that, oh my God, the main character's Black, you know, and he's older when the story starts. So it's told in flashback. So he didn't die,
Right.
which to me was like revolutionary because, you know, Black men die in science fiction and Black women aren't even there. That was the thing. Now that's changed a little bit lately, and I hope I'm part of that change. It is, I've been doing this for a long time, and my projects tend to always have been conceptual in design, but it was very difficult for me, and this is personal stuff, other things that happened, the environment at the time, which was lasted for like decades, was not really, they were not into that. They were not into that idea. You know, it's one thing to be able to write about Black characters in science fiction and speculative scenarios. It's another thing to show it.
Right.
So obviously, thank God to Jordan Peele, bless the man, blessings to Ryan Coogler, you know, because they really opened up the floodgates for us and they allowed us to be able to work on a world stage. So Maddie's Rocket, I was out of the comic industry from about 1999 when the industry crashed during the 90s. I worked for Marvel and did that whole thing, unpublished work. Like there's this amazing Dr. Dre just had a brain aneurysm. I'm like, yo, man, don't die yet. You know, I want you to be okay because I have this full published, this fully completed graphic novel that I did based on him. It was never printed, you know, called Dr. Dre Man with a Cold, Cold Heart for Marvel Music. And I want him to be okay because I want him to see it, you know? And so that's what my career has been. But as I began to adjust and the world began to kind of catch up, in 2014, I made the decision to jump back into comics with our mutual friends, Stacey Robinson and John Jennings, the whole Black Kirby duo. And they came over to my studio and they encouraged me to get back in. It took about 2 agonizing days to make the jump from animation back to comics. And I guess that was 2014. By January of 2015, Maddie's Rocket, the floppy one was out. And there we go. That's what happened. And all of that has led to Infinitum being coming out now.
Hmm. And so what? How would you describe? How would you describe Maddie's Rocket? What would you say was the elevator pitch for that?
Take the cast of Stormy Weather.
Okay.
Put it in a Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon Republic serial, and make Lena Horne the main character. That's Maddie's Rocket. Literally, that is Maddie's Rocket. I wanted to do something that my parents and my grandparents didn't have as young people. They did not see people who look like themselves, look like their parents in sci-fi scenarios. It's completely past. So that's the unique thing about the work that we're doing, is that because so much was left undone and unanalyzed, we kind of like have to work in the past, present, and future. That's one of the unique things, because futurism is generally about projecting what's coming in the future.
Right.
But because so much stuff was not done, you know, we have to kind of like work backwards and forwards, tends to be the lot in life of most people of color in the Western world. You're kind of like working, you're trying to resolve tensions from the past and continue to live in the future while doing all this in the present. So it's fascinating.
So yeah, so you went from Maddie's Rocket. I mean, what would you say are so let me make sure I have the timeline right? Mm-hmm. So you had started Infinitum before Maddie's Rocket, right?
No, actually, I created Maddie's Rocket back in the late 90s.
You did? Okay.
Yes, and at the time it was called If God Was a Woman and was pitched to Lou Stathis. of Vertigo
Okay.
Comics who showed some interest in it, and unfortunately, he passed away. But by that time, it was too late because the entire industry had, nobody knew in 1999, 2000, 2001 if the comic book industry, the American comic book industry, at least, would even be around.
Right.
And so by that point, I had made to transition to video game industry. So although I have little pockets of work, my career, to be quite frank, is very uneven because there's just not the infrastructure set up to even support that type of work. I think it was more certainly in the superhero genre, you had that.
Right.
When it comes to comics. That's why the guys from Milestones and Daoud, who I love dearly, were able to do their work because they were working within a genre that already had an established undercore
Okay.
within it. But when you're starting to deal with this kind of, oh man, Parker's not gonna die in Alien, he's gonna live. That was hard. The guy at the end of Night of the Living Dead, he's not gonna die, he's gonna live. He's actually gonna survive. That's a different thing. So I was, admittedly, my own issues as an artist, there's been years and years of struggle, but knowing that, I'm called to do this work, for better or for worse, frankly. It has not been the most smooth path, but it's the path. And here I am, a balding, older Black guy, still walking that path.
Well, and you also, I mean, something that's come up a lot is you taking steps to do everything yourself. And in previous conversations, you talked about what it means to have your own printer versus depending on someone else to print to print your books. Could you tell us a little bit about what were some of the key moments that moved you in that direction?
Well, I was doing Maddie's Rocket as floppies first. I think that's where we first had our first very, very long conversation. I'll never forget that conversation. And I was always held captive by the timeline and deadlines of the printer, right? If you didn't get it in at this time, then they couldn't print and they wouldn't even deal with you after. And that was frustrating for me. But I kept doing it. I got through issue 1 and issue 2. And then I said, you know what? I leased a printer. And I set up in my studio. At the time, we were living at a different location. And I printed the damn thing myself. So this book here, literally these pages are printed in the studio. The binding was done by this wonderful gentleman in Long Island, A Quick Bindery. I'll never forget because I had to take the first batch of what they call the guts of the book out through a graveyard covered in snow. So I had to take the Metro North out. I pulled everything because it's like I knew I had to do this, and I had done a lot of work for other people, and I knew I couldn't do that anymore. I was doing other people's work,
right?
Who I love dearly, all of them, but it's gotta. Are you here to draw other people's stories? Or are you here to draw your stories? And as I said, there's more behind than there is in front, and time is wasting. What's that line from Shawshank Redemption? Get busy living or get busy dying. I figured, hey, let's start living. So that required certain decisions that at the time felt selfish.
Right.
But I know that if I had continued on the path I was going in, was really doing a lot of work for other people, Infinitum literally would not exist. Maddie's Rocket wouldn't exist because I would have been on that path where your energies are dissipating towards other people, and that's fine. It's neither here or there. It's all good, but that's what I realized.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, it's got to be really interesting because as a reader, what we experience is Maddie's Rocket comes out, right, and then Infinitum comes out. Whereas for you, it's like if as you're finishing work on Maddie's Rocket, you got this other idea for Infinitum, which might be it's just percolating in the back, and then you're publishing, you're self-publishing Maddie's Rocket, and then but you've already got these ideas for Infinitum, right? So tell us a little bit about what it was like. You've got Maddie's Rocket out, and now you're trying to push forward with Infinitum, because it's like Maddie's Rocket is self-published, whereas Infinitum is not. And so what went into the decision to go from being self-published to working with a publisher, and what are the pros and cons of that transition?
Man, I will never forget that. I've said this before, but since the book is coming out, I guess it will pay to say it again. This was in April of 2018. The Maddie's Rocket graphic novel was published. I had gone on a book tour, a self-financed book tour, which was, you're doing this tour and you're financing all of the plane tickets yourself. You're financing any hotel rooms. You're begging people, hey man, can I sleep on your couch? That type of thing. All of the unglamorous part that's part of being an indie creator. That if you're serious about being an indie creator and you do not have a base in the direct market, then you must sell on the street. Right. You must sell at conventions. You must sell at gatherings. That's what you have to do. And I had learned to crack the code that worked for me. And the code for me was, if I print this thing myself, then I'm not held privy to someone else's rules. Now, of course, right, there are rules that you have to do there. You have to pay your lease. You have to make sure that you have enough books in stock. Oh my God, people love the book. I'm running out of stock. I can't print fast enough. I can't bind fast enough. Those are the things that I was into. And so by 2018, I will never forget, it was April and I was home and I was feeling exhausted, but proud of myself. But I was at this kind of, at this fork in the road. I had to make a decision whether or not, okay, it's getting winter. It's getting summer, it's getting warmer. So now you have to pour all you can into printing as many copies of Maddie's Rocket as you can, and you're just going to go out and sell. That's what you're going to do. And I loved it. It's exhausting, but I loved it. I loved it because I love interacting with my audience. I love talking too much sometimes, but that's what I did. And I'm talking there with my wife, and I'm like, yeah, well, I'm not going to get a book deal or anything like that. That's not my path. I don't do that type of thing. And she just looked at me and said, well, have you tried? And I was, what is she saying? I can't, that's no. But then after 5-10 minutes, I was like, well, I really haven't. And my sibling, Boston Fielder, who is my agent, or was my agent on this project, encouraged me to do it. We talked with several agents, and without going into too much detail, because it's a long story, I ended up securing a deal with Amistad. And hey, I sold out. Thank God. Thank God for selling out. Oh my God, it's so nice to sell out, finally. Thank God. Thank God for HarperCollins.
I always think of it this way, did you sell out or did you buy in? And that's the thing,
both,
right?
Both.
Right. And
both.
And I think that's the thing. It's like oftentimes we are we don't realize that there are some projects that work independently and some projects that don't, right? And there are pros and cons to going in either direction.
Yeah.
I like to think of it as for every bad deal that there is, with a big corporation, there's also a lot of failed attempts on the independent side, right?
There's more failed attempts on the independent side, in fact.
And more importantly, you're still cutting deals on the independent side that can go bad too.
Absolutely.
So that's why I'm always interested in hearing like what people are thinking of as they go on their path, whether it's independent or with a larger entity, because I think that that's one of the things that's very instructive for other people to hear about. Like, when does it make sense to go independent? When does it make sense to go with a larger entity?
All right, so I'll say this in that regard, and I can only speak for myself. This deal changed my life. That's it. It changed my life. It changed my life. This book here is not different than any book that I tried to do when I was 20, 22, 25. It's essentially the story, if you can read it. Anyone who reads the story, which you can go to Harper Carper Wells website and buy and pre-sale, at least for the next 10 days at this point, 9 days, 8 days. This book is basically a lot of different ideas I had for a lot of graphic novels put together in one huge book. Every decision, this book is the culmination of honest assessments and decisions. That's what it is. And I wanted to do a book that if I never did another book, this book would essentially allow me to sum up our experience within the speculative system scenario. It would allow me to do it from my perspective. It's not the end. It's not the final word. It's not the first word. It's just my word. And that is, and no one else cares really whether or not I do the work. That's the thing I learned. It took me many, many decades to learn that lesson. No one cares. You have to be prepared to put the energy into what it is that you're doing and to simply finish. And that, when I got to that reality for understanding how crucial it is to take your work to completion. It's like having dinner and not eating your food. It's like you never get the nutritional benefit from it if you're not prepared to expend that effort. And yeah, for me, I can't speak for anyone else, but for me, this book deal changed my life. It has opened me up to opportunities, some I can't speak about, that, beyond just the practical thing of just living day to day. I can work in my office now, and in my studio on my big tablet and do my books. The other side of it is that once you enter into a cooperative with a corporation, it really is a partnership. My job is to produce as many books, good books, but also to make sure that I make myself available to sell and to promote the book, make sure I got my ties and that my shirts aren't totally half wrinkled. That's my job. And I love that part. That's the part that I can take from my independent experience and having to do a lot of things, even from animation by myself, and to be able to take that and try your best not to step on people's toes. Because everybody, these people work who are in the book industry. They're these companies, they're companies, but they're made of people. And as long as you are expending your every energy to benignly and cooperatively move your project to the mass, then you'll be okay. That's my feeling of it. It requires a great deal of effort and work, but that's what it is. So for me, this book deal has changed my life. I'll go back to the India experience, but right now I'm looking forward to this. So this has been a ride and I'm ready to do it 20 more times.
Well, tell us, let's go a little deeper into Infinitum. Tell us how would you describe the book? What was your elevator pitch?
Okay, I'll give you the elevator pitch and then I'll give you the freight elevator pitch.
Okay.
Passenger elevator pitch and the freight elevator pitch. The passenger elevator pitch is I wanted to do a story about an African warlord who is cursed with the gift of immortality, which forces him to live over the course of eons, seeing the experience of Black people, the planets, the universe, till the end of time. That is Infinitum. The freight elevator pitch is I wanted to tell that exact story, but I wanted to be able to provide a fully rendered visual, paint, digital paint in my case, that would show Black people, show people of color in scenarios that they're not accustomed to seeing themselves in. So for example, there's a portion of the book, without going too much in the story, where I had done this huge breakdowns. And by the way, Infinitum is like one illustrated panel per page because I have no hair left. So there's a little, but it comes in patches now because I'm balding. So I want to keep what little hair I have left. So I knew, okay, I can't take 20 years to finish this book. So I have to make the decision, okay, I will do one fully rendered panel per page, but it'll be almost 300 pages so that the reader will know that I was literally giving up blood to finish this book. That's the first thing. Second thing is I wanted to do a story that would show us fully rendered. And with this section of the book I was talking about, I thought I was done, at least with the breakdowns, which was black and white. But I was at Ohio State University, and my very good god sister, Isis, is one of the instructors there. And she brought me by to meet the Latino, or the Latino speaking group there. And I showed—
Was that for SoulCon?
Yes, that was for
Okay.
SoulCon. Well, actually, SoulCon and the CXC, which works together.
Yes.
I love Frederick Aldama, who is fantastic, has been very supportive of me over my career, particularly since over the last few years, and Jeff Smith, who both have equally could have just disbanded, this guy's crazy, but they didn't. They kept putting up with me, and I love them both for that. But so I'm in Issa's class, and I showed them Infinitum, reading it. And the thing is, and they all gang up on me. They all come in. I'm like, yo, what's going on? What's going on? They're like, look, we want to be represented in this book. We feel like the Afro Latino experience is relevant to this book. And I was already at that point 220 pages. I'm tired. I can't. And I told them, guys, I can't do anymore. I really appreciate what you guys are saying, but no, it's too much. It's too much. And this guy said, look, I am telling you, our experience is important to this. And I went, well, I can't. That gives me an idea. And then by the time that trip ended, which was 4 days, 3-4 days, I was in the airport and I had drawn out that very important sequence that's in the book. It just made the book so much more expansive. It's not localized in the American South or in America. It's located all over the planet. And that's what I feel like Afrofuturism is. It's an international, it's diasporic and, homeland based at the same time. It is not localized to one thing.
Right.
And that's what I'm so thankful for, those folks forcing me to attack that part of that. I was kind of like, what even paying attention to. So that's what Infinitum has been. It has been trying to I'm trying to do a matrix level thing, boop.
Right.
Just show this is what Afrofuturism is what it can be.
Wow. So how just following the timeline here, it's like you've proposed a book, you've got the book, you're putting it out. What were some of the biggest challenges along the way in terms of producing a book like this?
You mean the endless suffering and pain of sitting at the table, and a horrible diet and not doing enough exercise? You mean that thing? Yeah. That was pretty much it. I can never do another book like that again. Because one, I didn't expect anyone to pick Infinitum up. It had already been rejected. before.
Right.
So why would anybody take it again? You know? But thank God for Ryan Coogler. Thank you, baby. Thank you. I owe you one big time. When I meet, I owe you. And it I am now much more respectful of the work that the Franco-Belgian artists do. How much time and care they put into their work over, they don't release a book every month. They release one album a year, every 18 months. You know what I mean? It's not a crew of 15 people doing it. It's one person who might have one or two assistants, depending upon the project. For me, I used Julie Anderson and Blossom Blair for about 2 weeks to help finish this one sequence where it had like 300 characters in one shot. It was a lot. But yeah, it's over the course of 18 months, it was intense work, but totally fulfilling. I learned about good chairs, ergonomic chairs. I learned that, certain ergonomic stands or arms are good, they're sexy, but you really should get the ergo stand, which allows you to lean. So that's what the next thing for me is to be engaged. Eric Battle, I'm listening to you. I'm definitely listening now. To engage in physical ergonomics that will allow me to not just produce the work more efficiently, but to actually enjoy the fruits of the labor, because I need all those type of things I'm doing. And I literally just got back in New York City 2 days ago, and that's what it's about. It's about doing that. So I'm interviewing, marketing, working on the next projects, and getting my mind and body right.
Wow. So, and tell me more about, because I think that's often a neglected area. Like, people don't talk as much about the actual making of the work. It's more about the images on the page, but coming back to the images on the page and this decision to go with one panel per page, right? Mm-hmm. I know that in some ways it allowed you to tell a much bigger story, but it also meant moving away from sequential art in some areas, and so in some ways it feels, having had an opportunity to review it, some scenes it feels much more like an illustrated book, and then it shifts into feeling more like a comic book, and I'm also seeing more of this style. What are some of the tell me a little more about some of the other pros and cons, and how you felt about shifting to that style, which is different from, say, a Maddie's Rocket, which is, a floppy comic, just, much more straight up, sequential art all the way through and through.
It was about survival. I could not, where my physical and mental conditions were at that time, I could not embark on a book with the 9 panel page layout. That just wasn't possible. But the idea of what the direct market says a comic book should and should not be, that's arbitrary anyway. Kadir Nelson does 30, 40 page books, fully rendered. I don't hear anyone complaining about, oh, he didn't do enough work. The guy is one of the most brilliant artists on the planet who's ever lived. So I had to divorce myself from that standard of what is determined to be correct, the correct way of doing things, because that clearly didn't work for me the previous 35 years. So why should I worry about it working now? So I want to tell a big story that when people see, it's one of the most interesting reviews I've gotten of Infinitum so far was from my sister-in-law, who lives in New Orleans. And she's an avid reader. She reads romance novels. And I asked her, what you think? Because she was still reading. She said, well, I love it. And I'm okay. So what about it do you love? I said, what do you think of the story? Because, you want to know, you want people to know that, you can write. I can write, right? She said, oh, it's great. But frankly, I've been looking at these images, and there's times I'm forgetting I'm reading the story. I'm so looking at the images, and I'm like, Okay, I'll take that. You know,
Right.
so it is. I am trying my best because I spent so much time becoming more comfortable with who I am as a person, raising my children, getting them through that gauntlet, and learning how to be at least proficient in I was out of the industry for 15 years. I was in animation, video game design. And so all of those tools I brought with me back to comics. So that's why I'm able to do Infinitum. You know, I'm able to use photography and 3D and 2D, and I'm able to access certain tools. These are the things that I'm able to bring to the table, and it frankly has made me a better artist and made the work more enjoyable. So I'm about trying to innovate the forms. I'm getting a little bit weird because I'm like, okay, well, how long am I going to stay on this track? Is there a point where I want to say perhaps get more abstraction in the work?
Right.
You know what I mean? But that's generally what happens. People say, well, you want to innovate, you got to go abstraction. That's the default. Yo, you got to do some Jackson Pollock. But I'm like, but the audience can't tell what they're seeing. It just splashes. You know what I mean? So I have to, that's the eternal struggle of the representational artist who can bridge the gap between the abstract art. That's why I have a great deal of affection for for Bill Sienkiewicz. You know, how he's able to take that kind of Bob Peak painting style, and then use photos. So there's that, but then there's also the thing that Kadir Nelson's art style, and I come back to him because he's master. His style stays pretty consistent over the decades, and I don't hear anyone complaining, hey, why hasn't he changed? Why hasn't his style changed? It's like, if you're good at something, how about you triple down on that? You know what I mean? How about you triple down on what you're good at? That was the other thing I had to realize as an artist, that, am I going to tell, long drawn journal comics? No. Even though ironically, Black Metropolis is my memoirs, using all of those decades of works that was never published, all in one huge book. I'm working on the package for it now. And I just like knowing that I don't have to be locked into any one thing. I can do whatever I want. And I'll say this last thing, which will be interesting, perhaps. Many of the creators in the direct market, which is its own kind of weird, kind of shrinking, volatile, tumultuous industry, many people in the trade industry, they have no clue who they are. They have no clue who they are, unless they're specialized editors who kind of play around with that. But the average person, the worker, they don't read direct, they don't read Batman or Superman. They don't read that stuff. They read Raina Telgemeier, they read her. They'll read Dave Pelkey. They'll read Jerry Kraft. You know what I mean? They'll read that, but they don't care. Their thing is there's a larger market out there that is completely open to different art styles, different ways of telling stories. And thank God I'm in that now, because I don't have to fight against decades of entrenched ideas of what comics should be.
Right.
It's like, I didn't realize, and I've been saying this because it bears saying, apparently Infinitum is the first Afrofuturist graphic novel with an original storyline, not non-adaptation from a major publisher. I didn't know that, and it's on one end, it's like, oh, great, I'm the first. But on the other end, it's like, whoa, I'm 54 years old. What happened? What happened? I was out of the industry for 15 years. What happened? So, hey, I'm tailing Planet of the Apes, man. They blew it up. And so now I'm back. Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear. I mean, yeah, I mean, like I said, this has been some really wonderful work, and it's a real pleasure to have a chance to talk to you about it, especially given haven't been given the opportunity to see it, you know, many years ago when it was a much smaller idea. You know, is there any, you know, because as we come to a close, is there any other, like, any thoughts or any advice that you would like to leave, you know, your other creators who are coming up who are interested in doing the same things that you're doing?
Right. Oh, yes. And I've said it before, and I don't mind repeating it again because it's so important. Finish, finish, finish. And then when you finish, you keep finishing. Because your ability to finish has both a industry component. You prove that you can finish to the business partners you will be in concert with. When you finish, you prove to yourself that you have the ability to take a narrative, written and drawn narrative, whether you're collaborating with someone or not. You have the ability within you to finish. And three, when a project, I mean, it's happening now a lot because the book is about to come out. So there are things that are coming to me that I didn't even know were going to happen, just like within the last 10 hours. I can't even go into it. But I'm just saying, when you finish and you deliver to market, it's not enough to finish the book, the art, the story. You have to put it in a physical form. You have to be able to hold it in your hand. When you can hold it in your hand, whether it's independent or with a book deal or whatever, and let me be frank with this. I understand it's difficult to get a book deal. I'm not saying, oh, sure, anybody can get a book. No, not everybody's going to get a big deal. There's more independent authors than there are people with book deals. I know that. I was one of them for a while. But you open yourself up to opportunity and to energy when you finish. And nobody cares. I mean, this is a very important part. Nobody cares if you don't finish. And it's the sober thing. I was naive for so long. It's that thing. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. You can leave the planet. And if you didn't do your work, you can't blame it on anybody else. You can only blame yourself. And Chadwick Boseman he was dying on the screen, man. Every performance, boom, boom, years. So what's our excuse? You know what I mean? When you really get down to what's your excuse? What's my excuse? Well, nobody cares. And you could be gone tomorrow. That's my advice. Get it done.
Hmm. Well, I want to thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
That is like the perfect note to end this on.
Thank you so much, man.